The challenge at the gym was filled with noise that night. The crowd pressed close around the mat, their voices rising in laughter and excitement. At the center stood a young man named Victor. He was tall, strong, and carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never been truly challenged. Victor was the reigning karate champion of the city, and he had grown arrogant with every win. He walked across the mat, his black belt tied tight, his grin wide as he looked at the people watching him. "Who's next?" he shouted. "Come on. Is there no one here who can give me a real fight?" His voice dripped with pride, his eyes scanning for anyone braver, foolish enough to step forward. The room grew quiet for a moment, until one of the younger fighters whispered, "About him." He nodded toward the corner of the gym, where a man sat quietly on a bench, dressed in simple clothes, not a karate uniform. Everyone turned their heads. Sitting there calm and relaxed was Keanu Reeves. He hadn't come to fight. He'd come because he was supporting a charity event being held at the gym. But now, dozens of eyes were on him, and Victor's smirk widened. "You," Victor said, pointing. "Yeah, you're that actor, right? People say you trained for movies, John Wick, martial arts, all that. Why don't you show us what you've got, unless it's all fake?" The crowd gasped, their whispers filling the air. Some laughed nervously. Others waited to see how Keanu would respond. Keanu looked up slowly. His expression was calm, not angry. His eyes rested on Victor, and for a moment, the room felt heavy with silence. Then, in a quiet voice, he said, "Fighting isn't about proving who is better. It's about discipline, respect, and control. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone." But Victor laughed loudly. "Discipline, respect. Come on, don't hide. Behind words, if you're really as skilled as they say, prove it. Or admit you're just an actor playing pretend." The taunts echoed through the gym. People leaned in, their curiosity burning. Keanu stood slowly, his movements deliberate and calm. He walked toward the mat, the crowd parting to let him through as he stepped onto the floor. He bowed not to Victor, but to the space itself, the tradition, the art of karate. That small gesture made some of the older fighters nod with respect. Even before the match began, Victor smirked, bouncing on his feet, ready to show off his strength. "This will be over in seconds," he boasted. Keanu adjusted his stance, his body relaxed, his breathing steady. He did not smirk, he did not boast. His silence was louder than Victor's shouts. The referee raised his hand and dropped it. "Begin." Victor lunged forward immediately, his fists swinging fast, his kicks sharp and aggressive. The crowd cheered at his speed. But Keanu didn't flinch. He stepped aside, his movements smooth and controlled, dodging with ease. His eyes never left Victor's, his focus unbroken. Within seconds, Victor grew frustrated. "Stand and fight," he shouted, throwing another strike. But again, Keanu moved with calm precision, redirecting the attack instead of meeting it with force. To the crowd, it looked almost unreal. Victor's power meant nothing against Keanu's control. Finally, with one swift motion, Keanu caught Victor's arm, twisted gently, and brought him to the mat. Not with violence, but with skill so clean, the crowd fell silent. Victor struggled, but Keanu released him quickly, stepping back and bowing again. "The first lesson of martial arts," he said softly, his voice carrying through the silence, "is humility. Without it, strength is nothing." The room erupted in cheers and whispers. Some clapped, some stared in shock, and Victor sat on the mat, his pride shattered. But this was only the beginning. Because what started as a challenge in a gym would soon grow into a story that reached far beyond the walls of that room, a story about pride, respect, and the power of humility. Asterisk the lesson that cut to Perth, Jim was still buzzing after the fight. People couldn't stop talking about what they had just seen. Keanu had not thrown a single violent punch. Yet Victor, the undefeated champion, had been brought down in less than a minute. Some clapped Victor on the back, saying, "Don't worry, you'll get him next time." Others shook their heads, whispering he underestimated him. He didn't understand who he was facing. Victor sat alone on the edge of the mat, sweat dripping down his face. But the sting wasn't in his body, it was in his pride. For years he had lived on applause, on trophies, on the sound of people chanting his name. Tonight, all he heard was the echo of Keanu's calm words. The first lesson of martial arts is humility. His fists clenched, anger boiling. "He embarrassed me," Victor muttered under his breath, in front of everyone. Keanu, meanwhile, had quietly slipped to the side of the gym, speaking kindly with a group of younger students. He praised their discipline, asked about their training, encouraged them to focus not on winning, but on learning. His voice carried warmth, not arrogance, and the children listened with wide eyes. Watching this only made Victor's anger burn. Hotter, he stormed over, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't think this is over. That was luck. Give me a real fight, no dodging, no tricks. Let's see what you can do when you actually fight like a man." The gym fell silent. Again, all eyes turned to Keanu. The younger students looked nervous, fearing another clash, but Keanu simply turned, his expression calm. "Victor," he said softly, "you fight to win over others. I fight to win over myself. If you still believe it was luck, then you didn't hear the lesson." The words cut deeper than any strike. Victor's face turned red with fury. "Don't talk to me like I'm a child. I'll prove I'm better than you. You'll see." Keanu looked at him with quiet compassion. "Strength without humility will always turn into weakness. We don't need another fight to see that you need to listen." But Victor could not hear. The humiliation drowned out the wisdom. He stormed out of the gym, leaving the crowd whispering behind him later that night. Victor sat alone in his apartment, his trophies lined up across the shelves, shining in the dim light. Once those trophies had meant everything. Now they looked hollow. His mind replayed the moment Keanu brought him down, not with force, but with control. With grace. For the first time in years, Victor felt doubt. He wondered if all his victories meant anything at all. But pride is a stubborn enemy. Instead of seeking understanding, Victor made a vow. "I'll challenge him again, and this time I won't hold back. I'll make the world see who the real champion is." The next day, news of the fight spread across social media. Clips of Keanu's calm defense went viral. People praised his humility, his respect, his discipline. "That's real martial arts," one comment said. It showed more strength by controlling himself than by beating his opponent. Victor scrolled through the comments, each one stabbing at his pride. "They think he's better than me," he hissed. "They think I'm a fool. I'll show them." He didn't know it yet. But the path he was choosing would lead him not just to another fight, but to a lesson far greater, one that would break him before it rebuilt him. And for Keanu, this was not about a rival or a challenge. It was about guiding someone lost in their own pride toward a truth that could save them if they were willing to see it. The second challenge weeks passed, but Victor's pride refused to heal. Everywhere he went, he heard the whispers. "That's the guy who lost to Keanu Reeves." Children at the gym copied Keanu's movements, repeating his words about humility. Even Victor's own students looked at him differently, their respect shaken. His anger grew each day, feeding on itself until he could no longer bear it. One evening, he returned to the same gym where the first fight had happened. This time, he brought reporters, photographers, and a crowd of fans. He wanted the world to see his redemption. Standing in the center of the mat, microphone in hand, Victor's voice boomed. "Last time, people said I was arrogant. They said I lost because I underestimated him. Tonight, I prove once and for all that I am the true champion." He pointed toward the entrance where Keanu had just walked in, quietly as he always did. "Reeves, I'm calling you out. No excuses this time, no stepping aside. Fight me properly in front of everyone, unless you're afraid." The crowd roared, some cheering Victor, others shouting Keanu's name. Cameras flashed, capturing every moment. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Keanu stood still for a long moment, his calm presence almost unsettling in the chaos. Then, in a steady voice, he said, "I'm not here to prove anything. Fighting you again won't heal your pride. But if this is the only way you will learn, then I will accept." The crowd erupted. Chants filled the room, and all eyes locked on the mat as the two men prepared. The referee signaled, and the fight began. This time, Victor came prepared. His strikes were sharper, his movements quicker, his power undeniable. He threw heavy kicks, powerful punches, forcing Keanu to move fast, to block, to counter. The crowd gasped as each strike landed dangerously close. But Keanu remained calm. He absorbed the rhythm of Victor's attacks, flowing like water, never meeting force with force. When Victor lunged with a fierce kick, Keanu sidestepped. When Victor swung his fist, Keanu deflected with ease. The fight went on longer than the first. Sweat poured down Victor's face, his breathing heavy. Frustration boiled inside him again. "Fight me for real," he shouted, his voice cracking with rage. Keanu single quotes, eyes never left his. "This is real." But real fighting isn't about destroying your opponent, it's about mastering yourself. With one precise movement, Keanu caught Victor's strike, twisted, and once again brought him to the mat. The crowd gasped, then exploded in noise. Victor lay on the ground, gasping for air, his pride shattered a second time. Keanu stepped back, bowing respectfully. He turned to the crowd, his voice calm, but firm. Martial arts is not about humiliation or fame. It is about respect. Every fight should begin and end with it. Without respect, victory means nothing. The audience erupted in applause. Some parents clapped, the children cheered, and even the reporters lowered their cameras, struck by the truth in his words. Victor sat on the mat, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. His body ached, but what hurt more was the realization settling deep inside him. This wasn't about Keanu defeating him. It was about the emptiness of his own arrogance. That night, while the crowd celebrated, Victor walked home alone, looked at his trophies again, the walls lined with medals and certificates. But for the first time, they felt meaningless. What am I fighting for? He whispered into the silence. In his heart, he knew the answer. Not honor, not discipline, not respect. He had been fighting only for pride, and pride had left him empty. But the lesson was not yet complete. Soon, life would test him in ways the mat never had, and he would discover that strength is not measured in victories, but in the courage to change. Asterisk the fall of pride after the second defeat, Victor disappeared from the gym for days. His phone buzzed with messages, reporters asking for interviews, fans demanding answers, critics mocking him. But he ignored them all. He sat alone in his apartment, surrounded by trophies that no longer meant anything. His pride, once a fire that made him strong, now felt like chains pulling him down. The image of Keanu bowing after the fight played in his mind over and over. The crowd had not cheered Victor's power. They had cheered Keanu's humility. But Victor wasn't ready to surrender. Instead of reflecting, he turned his anger outward. "He embarrassed me twice," Victor muttered to himself. "He made me look weak. I'll make him regret it." Began training harder than ever, pushing his body to the limit. His strikes grew sharper, his kicks more powerful. But something was missing. No matter how much strength he gained, the calm control he had seen in Keanu was nowhere to be found. His movements were fast, but his heart was restless. One evening, after hours of training, Victor collapsed on the mat, his chest heaving. An older master from the gym approached quietly. He had watched Victor grow over the years. "Power without peace is destruction," the master said softly. "You chase victory, but you don't seek wisdom. That is why you keep losing." Victor clenched his fists. "I don't care about wisdom. I care about winning. I care about respect." The master shook his head. "Respect cannot be taken. It can only be given." To you, the words hit hard, but Victor pushed them away. Later that week, an unexpected opportunity came. A national tournament was announced, one that would bring fighters from across the country. Victor saw it as his chance for redemption. He signed up immediately, determined to prove himself on the biggest stage. When news spread that Keanu had been invited as a guest to watch the tournament, Victor's obsession deepened. "Good," he whispered. "He'll be there. He'll see me win. And then everyone will forget those losses." The tournament day arrived. The arena was massive, filled with cheering fans, cameras flashing everywhere. Victor stepped onto the mat, his heart pounding. His opponents were strong, disciplined, and skilled, but one by one, he defeated them. Not with grace, but with raw aggression. The crowd cheered, but it was a nervous cheer. People could see the anger in his movements, the lack of respect in his strikes. He fought to destroy, not to honor. Finally, he stood in the finals, sweat dripping, chest heaving. The announcer's voice echoed. The last match of the night begins now. Victor's opponent was skilled and calm, much like Keanu. At first, Victor dominated with speed and strength, landing heavy blows. The crowd roared, but then his anger betrayed him.
Ow.
His strikes grew sloppy, his breathing uneven. With one precise counter, his opponent brought him down. The referee raised his hand. Victor had lost. The arena erupted not in cheers, but in murmurs of disappointment. Sitting in the front row, Keanu watched silently. His eyes were not mocking, not proud, only sad. He had hoped Victor would learn, that he would grow. The young man was still chasing shadows. After the match, Victor stormed outside, his chest burning with shame. Fans tried to speak to him, but he shoved past, his pride too wounded to hear anything. He found himself alone in the dark, his fists bleeding from punching the wall. "Why can't I win?" he shouted into the night. But deep down, he knew the answer. It wasn't his body that was weak, it was his spirit. And soon life would give him a test outside the ring, one that no trophy, no strength, and no pride could prepare him for. A test that would finally force him to face the truth Keanu had been trying to teach all along. The test of life. After the tournament loss, Victor's name began to fade. New fighters rose, new champions claimed the spotlight, and his once glorious reputation slipped away. Sponsors pulled back, fans stopped cheering, and the whispers grew. "Calder, he's finished," people said. He had power but no spirit. For a while, Victor tried to ignore it. He trained harder, but the fire inside him felt different now. The more he chased recognition, the emptier he felt. Night, he stared at his reflection in the mirror, searching for the champion he once believed he was. But all he saw was a man broken by pride. Then one evening, fate intervened. Victor was walking home from the gym when he heard screams near a side street. Instinct made him run. There, under the flickering streetlights, he saw two men harassing a woman and her small child. The boy clung to his mother, terrified. Without thinking, Victor stepped forward. "Leave them alone," he growled. The men laughed, but when they saw the fire in his eyes, they lunged. Victor fought back, his body reacting with the years of training he carried. His punches landed hard, his kicks sharp. Within moments, the attackers fled into the night. The woman clutched her child, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. The boy looked up at Victor with wide, grateful eyes. And in that moment, Victor felt something he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the thrill of victory. It wasn't pride. It was purpose. He knelt down to the boy's level and said softly, "You're safe now." The child nodded, still trembling, but a small smile appeared as Victor walked away. His heart pounded not with arrogance, but with realization. This is what strength is for," he whispered. "Not for trophies, not for applause, but for protecting." The next day, he went to the gym, but instead of training for himself, he asked to help with the younger students. At first, they looked at him cautiously, remembered his anger, his arrogance. But slowly, as he guided them, corrected their stances, and praised their discipline, something changed. He began to see the art not as a weapon for pride, but as a gift to pass on. One evening, as he finished helping a student, he turned and saw Keanu standing at the doorway, watching quietly. "You've changed," Keanu said softly. Victor looked down, ashamed. "I lost everything, the fights, the fans, the respect. But last night I realized, maybe I deserved to lose. Maybe I needed to." Keanu stepped closer. "Sometimes losing is the only way to see what truly matters. Strength isn't shown in victory. It's shown in how you use it when no one is watching." Victor's eyes burned. I understand now. I fought for pride, but pride gave me nothing. I want to fight for something real. Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder, his voice steady. Then your journey is only beginning. From that day forward, Victor trained differently. Not with anger, not with obsession, but with respect. He taught children discipline, he helped beginners find confidence, and he learned to bow with sincerity. The trophies on his shelves still gathered dust, but now they didn't haunt him. They simply reminded him of who he had been and who he never wanted to be again. But destiny wasn't done with him yet. News spread of a new international tournament, one that would bring fighters from across the world. The organizers invited Keanu as a guest of honor again, and to Victor's surprise, they also asked him to fight. This time, Victor didn't see it as a chance to restore pride. He saw it as a chance to prove to himself that he had truly changed. And deep inside, he wondered, would he finally be able to fight not for arrogance but for honor? Asterisk the fight of honor. The arena lights blazed brightly, the sound of thousands of voices echoing through the space. It was the international tournament, bigger than anything Victor had ever stepped into before. Banners waved, cameras flashed, and fighters from around the world stood ready. This was not just about power, it was about spirit, respect, and honor. Victor stood at the edge of the mat, his heart steady but calm. This time, there was no arrogance in his eyes, no smirk on his face. Instead, he bowed deeply to his opponent before the fight began. The crowd noticed. The man who had once been called proud and arrogant now carried himself with quiet dignity. Among the audience sat Keanu, watching closely. He had seen Victor's journey, the falls, the anger, and the painful lessons. Now he wanted to see if the young man truly understood the meaning of strength. The fight began. Victor's opponent was fierce, fast, precise, and disciplined. In the past, Victor would have rushed in, swinging wildly, trying to dominate with sheer power. But not tonight. Tonight, he stayed calm, measured, controlled. He blocked, deflected, and struck with respect, never wasting energy, never letting anger rule him. The match was intense. Both fighters exchanged blows, the crowd roaring with each move. Sweat dripped down Victor's face, his muscles burning, but his mind was clear. Each strike he threw was not for pride, but for the art itself. It's for the honor of the fight. Finally, in the last round, Victor saw an opening. With one swift, clean movement, he landed a decisive strike that brought his opponent to the mat. The referee raised his hand. Victor had won. The arena exploded with applause, but Victor didn't raise his arms in triumph. Instead, he helped his opponent to his feet, bowed deeply, and whispered words of respect. The cameras caught it, and for once, the world saw not arrogance, but humility. Keanu stood and clapped slowly, a small smile on his face. He wasn't proud because Victor had won, he was proud because Victor had changed. Later, in the quiet hallway, behind the arena, Victor found Keanu waiting. His chest still rose and fell with heavy breaths, but his eyes carried peace. I finally understand, Victor said softly. Strength is nothing without humility. I thought I needed victory, but what I needed was respect for others and for myself. Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. And now you've learned the true lesson. This fight wasn't against your opponent. It was against your own pride, and you won. Victor's eyes burned with tears, but they were not tears of shame anymore. They were tears of freedom. From that day, he continued to fight, but not for trophies or applause. He fought to teach, to inspire, to guide others away from the path he once walked. His story spread, not as the arrogant champion who mocked others, but as the fighter who learned the power of humility. And in every bow, in every lesson, in every match, he carried the quiet wisdom Keanu had shown him. True strength is not in defeating others, but in mastering yourself.